Good afternoon. Welcome back to another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. You are tuned into Breathtaking, a brief discussion of timelessness. Hosted by BenQ with I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it with a straight face. I was laughing from the start. The man himself. I've been waiting to have you back on, Vinny, Mr. Vincent Versace.
And I have been waiting to come back. I missed you guys.
We missed having you. I don't have any cheesecake today.
Oh, well, that's all right. I'll just sick all the people watching on you to get me some cheesecake. It's no big deal. If you didn't bring it, that's okay.
I'm used to it.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This is interesting because of the way the time differences all work. Because I'm in Portugal right at the moment. I haven't been home now for 5 weeks. I was in Cuba, then straight to Portugal.
What a pity. You live such a difficult life. Last time I saw you was in Monterey. You were just blowing the crowds away with a rousing in-person performance at Optic West, and now you're halfway across the world.
Well, yeah, I went from Monterey straight to Cuba, from Cuba straight to here.
I pity you. I pity you, Vinny. So tough.
It's a tough life. It is. It really is. I will tell you that Portugal is probably by far one of the most amazing places I have ever been. Visually, it is photographer's dream. What's really unique about the place is I've never been to a place that really cries out to be photographed in black and white. It prefers, for as colorful as the place is,
interesting,
it prefers to be photographed in black and white. It has an opinion. And the food, and the wine. If you drink wine, it doesn't matter what the price is. It can be a €2 bottle of wine, or a 12-euro bottle of wine, or a 20-euro bottle of wine. They're all amazing.
Well, I'm gonna have to add it to my list. I don't get out much, but I trust, if there's one thing I trust you on, it's photography and then food, or
yeah,
food and then photography.
Food and then photography, because I have the degree in it. Or the width, either way.
Well, I'm going to let you take us all away on a trip into this breathless vision you have planned for us. But I'm going to remind everybody, if you do have any questions, feel free to get them in. But for the next hour, just relax and listen to the master himself. Vinny, take it away.
Okay. So I gave this a lot of thought. I gave it more thought than I normally want to give a conversation. And the reason why I try not to think a lot about what I want to do is because I think that removes the absolute spontaneity of the conversation, and it limits where it can go. That said, so generally I'm about as interested to hear what's going to come out of my mouth as most people that are there, because I don't necessarily know. But on this, the thought was, I had already done a presentation for BenQ on technique, and I can give you a lot of technique, but I wanted to give you a conversation about what I am thinking about now and what it is that I'm working on trying to codify into a thought. So the concept that I came up with was breathtaking, and it's a discussion on the concept of timelessness. So with that said, let's pay the rent. What I ask for all of you to do, if you could be so kind, is to follow me on Instagram, because we know that Instagram is the center of the universe. So that's my Instagram coordinates. And if you don't, please do. And if you, at the end of this conversation, feel you'd like to see my work or see more of my work, please follow me on Instagram. All right. Where the idea comes from is from something that Cartier-Bresson says, which is, get back over here, is not cooperating, sorry, is give me inspiration over information, because inspiration is rare, but information you can find anywhere. And what I want to talk about is voice, and how I conceptualize what I see and what I think is things to consider in seeing, because there are some beliefs that I have about photography, one of which is this quote by Karl Lagerfeld. And it's going to be a through line to the conversation that we're going to have about photography. And I also am keen on this. This is sometimes assigned to Einstein, but in reality, Ray Cummings came up with this quote, and it was in an article that he had written about Einstein in a conversation that he had, so I understand. But most importantly, at the end of this conversation, please remember this quote: talent copies, genius steals. So let's talk about what I think is the poetry of science, which is photography. And photography is a form of art that is heavily affected by physics. And of the sciences, I feel that physics is the poetry of science, and optical physics in particular is the way in which that poetry is expressed. So we're going to look at some concepts. The first concept is something called tachypsychia, equipoise, temporal apogee, and the relativity of simultaneity. So let's start with tachypsychia. Now, tachypsychia is this interesting effect, in one of which Einstein described in relativity simply as this: put your hand on the stove for a minute, it feels like an hour. Talk to a pretty girl for an hour, it feels like a minute. That's relativity. It's the ability to the experience of time to dilate, where you can feel time start to slow down. In photography, one of the things that I invite you to explore, allowing yourself to experience, is the ability to watch time slow down, where a second feels like a minute feels like an hour, and you can see the events unfold. In doing that, what you can find is the next concept: equipoise. Now, equipoise, the best way to describe it is, let's look at a beating heart. There are 4 parts to a heart, and they all beat. But there's one moment in which all of the parts of the heart are not beating, but the heart is still beating. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That moment of balance is equipoise. The equipoise of the heart. Now, in photography, in photographing an image, there is also the equipoise of the image, which has to do with the moment that becomes the decisive moment, where what you want to do is to create that sensation of a breath held expectant, in that you're like, before you breathe out, where when you look at that picture, it holds you, it takes your breath. And how you achieve that is by taking the previous 2 thoughts and combining them to find something that, for lack of a better way to describe it, is temporal apogee, the arc of a moment. A wave comes in, a wave comes out, but there's a moment where a wave is neither coming in or coming out. That moment is the temporal apogee of that moment. The decisive moment in a photograph is the temporal apogee of that moment. The issue is, when did that second occur? What made that 1/25th of a second more decisive than the other 124 moments in that second? The issue where that happens is when you are in sync with everything, when you find yourself in that moment where time starts to dilate, where you can find yourself in the flow and finding the equipoise of there. And it becomes an effortless experience, because you are being taken by the image, by allowing yourself to be taken, by being able to ride the wave of that and finding those moments of equipoise. Here's the fun one, and I apologize if this hurts, and I apologize if I do not get this concept completely correct. What I would invite you to do is, rather than tell me what a blithering idiot I am, and then walk away, tell me why. I'd like to invite you all to participate in a Aristotelian conversation where we argue about things in a way in which for all of us to be better, not just it didn't work or it's not good. Tell me why. And it's this concept. It's a concept of the relativity of simultaneity. And what is so wild about this concept and why it is so on point for photography is that the way in which we experience moments of time is relative to the position in which we see the event occur. So I can be in one place and you can be in another place, and we can be looking at the same event, but we will experience it in completely different ways. What a photograph is capable of doing is it's capable of freezing a moment in time in such a way that any viewer of that can see the echo of the experience of the moment that took you. And that, I think, is an extraordinary thing to pay attention to. And so we have to understand what that means. Give you an example. If I'm on a train and I'm in the middle of the train, I'm observer one, and there's a person on a train track or on a train station, that's observer two, and the train's moving. The person in the middle of the train turns on a light. For the person on the train, what they will do is they will experience the light hitting both walls at the same time. For the person that's in the middle of the train station, as the train moves by them, what I will see is that the light hits the back wall before it hits the front wall, even though light travels at the same speed at the same distance. It is the observation of the experience that becomes different for the viewer and the viewer one and viewer two. What a photograph allows me to do is it allows me to share a moment of time, to isolate it, to freeze it in some way in which we can look at it and we can all experience it. Now, to some of it, a painting can do that, but a painting is more of an interpretation of events that occurred from memory versus the moment taking you in that moment and being able to see it. And I find that by allowing yourself to be open and receptive to it, you can create better pictures, which leads us to today's rant, which will be a discussion of timelessness you wish was a bit briefer. So with that said, let's start the slideshow. Now, I picked pictures of my work that I think express, for me, the experience of both being taken and what it feels like to have the experience of timelessness. And let me just check to make sure that you're running. You are. And each one of these moments that I'm showing you, I believe express the concept of when the best. When was this? I can tell where, I can tell why, I can maybe even tell how, but I have no idea as to when. Could it have been yesterday? Could it have been a year ago? Could it have been 50 years ago? That what I'm endeavoring to capture is a moment of temporal apogee, where you can feel that there's a moment before and that it's on its way to a moment after, and where I am is in the moment now. And the now is an interesting thing to understand, and it's mind-boggling when you think about it. For example, the faster you go, time changes. So the closer you approach the speed of light, you get to the point where there is no time or no experience of time. What that means is that if a star blows up to a supernova, and it takes 30,000 years for that photon to get to you, to get to us on Earth. For us, it's 30,000 years. For the photon, it's as if the event just happened. Now, understanding that time is different and that time is affected by many, many different things kind of changes the way you start to perceive what it is that you're trying to do with an image. You are trying to capture moments of time that took you. And I think one of the important goals is to create images that have a moment of timelessness where you have absolutely no idea when. Those, I find in my work, are the ones that are received the most successfully. And there's a fine-edged sword about creating images in which you seek meaning versus creating images in which make meaning. And by that, what I mean is I find a lot of people, oh, I've got to find an image that's relevant. No, don't go looking for an image that's relevant. Allow the moments that are relevant to you to take you and just record those moments. Will some moments be more successful than others? Yes, they will. But it doesn't matter whether or not they're more successful or less successful. They only matter if they're successfully relevant for you, that they reflect a moment in time that took you. in the course of this conversation, I've thought about what it means to be a teacher, which is what I want to bring to this. And it doesn't matter if you take whatever it is that you hear and go, oh my God, that changed me, steal it. Why I say that and why I mean that is my job is to make it so that you experience a new set of tools for you to see the world in a way in which prior to our conversation, you didn't think about, and now you do. And that's the goal of this conversation. When you talk to people, when you work to people, when you have a conversation like this, what you're doing is you're giving one of the two greatest gifts you can give somebody. One is the gift of your time, because I'll never have this time back, and I can share it, and I can share where it is that I'm at. And I think that that's important because I need to pay back the debt that I have to those that taught me. The other gift that you can give somebody is a memory. The greatest gift is a memory or a rememory. A photograph allows you to encapsulate a moment and give that person a memory. You can give them a copy of your memory of what it was like to experience that moment, or you can capture that moment for somebody in which every time they look at it, it becomes the icon of that feeling. Far more, I feel, than motion. I have to tell an entire story in one frame. I don't have the luxury of telling it in many frames. And it was a conversation I had with Eddie Adams, which is why he never got into videos, because he thought he had a greater way of telling his story singularly in one image instead of many. One of the things I was reading on Instagram, photography is dead. It's not dead. Let's see in 20 years. That's like saying that when photography happened, painting was dead. That's not dead either. Every form is a way in which you as a visual artist can express that which is uniquely yours, which is your voice. And what is important to keep in mind, I feel, with regard to voice and understanding technique, because there are those that, oh, I don't want to learn that. I don't want to, I don't want to learn Photoshop. I don't want to learn Lightroom. I want to just have it be raw, feed off the camera. That's great. Technique is the most important thing because it makes it so that your voice doesn't have to shout to be heard. That you can do things in a way that will cause the viewer's eye to be held and to look at that picture and to look at that image and to explore it. And then you can imbue in that image the sensations and feelings of what it is that you saw, what it is that you felt, what it is that you smelled, what it is that took you, the breeze. When I look at my work, when I'm working on it, I try to remember all the events that occurred at that moment that the moment took me. And I would like to believe that I can impart into that image those qualities, that I allow those qualities to flow through my hand, and it's my technique that allows me to change the image in such a way that I remove everything from the image that takes away from it, so that what I wind up with is I free that experience out of the image, and the image then becomes alive. It has a life. It has a life the same way that the I Ching has a life. The I Ching, if you read the description of it, exists and has energy because people put energy in it. So as long as you put the energy into it, it has the energy coming back out. If we look at an image, our images with that metaphor, we can breathe back some semblance of the moment of life that we caught the echo of. Even if the viewer did not experience it when you did, they can experience it in a way in which you did. I really do believe that one of the goals of a visual artist, of a photographer, is to create images so that when the viewer is looking at the image, it is as if, that's hard to say, it is as if the viewer is standing in the exact same place I was when the moment took me. When that moment grabbed me, when I allowed myself to be open to it, and I let that tug on my heart and on my spirit force my finger to fire, I'm pulled through the lens versus me trying to drag the image through the lens. The image pulls me. And when I do that, when I create images in which show me the echo of that moment, they're as much fun for me to watch as I hope they are for people that look at my work. I enjoy looking at my work, not because, oh my God, look at my work, because I remember what it was like to experience those moments where I can see the color of life come back into the image and just take me again, where I can remember what it felt like to watch somebody not realize that their picture's being taken and allow me to see where it is that they hide. And I can capture that moment of the spirit that they hold inside of them that is precious to them, because that's my job. My job is to show those moments. My job is to show the beauty of the world, to find that interesting plainness and to show it, to find the beauty of the color and the geometry of the fractal of the way the world is, to have all of these things at my disposal, to use the technique of bokeh, to use the technique of focus, to use the technique of complementary colors, to adversarial colors, to playing with all of those things to create an image that when you stop for a moment, you have to look at it and take it. To take things that are just simply walking through a farmer's market and collecting a bunch of tomatoes and putting them in a light well and photographing them. It is that freedom to do that, which brings me to what I think is another point I'd like to cover. One of the great joys of my life is I've never been forced for any prolonged period of time to follow my plans B, C, and D for my life. I've always been on track to follow what is the plan A of what I always wanted to be, which was an artist. I can't remember a time in my life where I didn't want to do the things in which I have gone to school for, that I have always followed the path of creating, that I have lived my daydream. And too frequently, I find people who choose not to live their daydream because their daydream scares the bejesus out of them. If it doesn't scare you, it isn't worth doing. Follow your heart, follow your dream, follow that daydream that you have, and follow that path to experiencing the thing that talks to you most. Creativity all comes from the same place. It's not like, oh, you're this type of creative or that type of creative or this. You're creative. You just choose a metaphor to express it. For me, my metaphor is still imagery. My metaphor is, chromatic grayscale, black and white, and playing with big color. And I love doing that. For me, as a photographer, I endeavor to do at least well. Some I do better than others, but I try to do at least at a level in which it's acceptable, every form of photography. It's natural light, hot light, strobe light, macro photography, nature, wildlife, still life, portraits, all of it. And the reason why I choose to do that is I've chosen to be a photographer, a master photographer, which means I need to master all aspects of photography, because that metaphor, all photography comes from the same place. I approach my portraits like they're landscapes, that you can see the entire landscape of the experience of the moment, the texture of the moment. And I treat my landscapes like they're portraits, that I'm trying to tell the individual story of the individual thing in front of me, taking that entire totality and putting it into one image. And it's that cross-pollination of the two disciplines that allows me to mix those disciplines and to create images in which no image scares me. In my career, I have never, ever been asked if I've ever done it before. I've only ever been asked if I can do it, to which the answer is always yes. The answer to the question is always yes. No stops the forward motion of things. Yes causes the forward motion of things to occur. And as a visual artist, your job is to always be moving forward, to create the forward motion of creativity, to open up and receive the world. Everybody has something to say. Everybody's voice is important. Just like every actor has within them an Academy Award performer, it's just a matter of context. With visual art, everybody has something important to say. If you've chosen to do this, That's because those images spoke to you in such a way that you feel the compelling need to share the world that you see. Share it. Live your plan A. Don't back off from it. Enjoy every moment of taking that picture. And if you're not good at something, don't go game over, man. Don't let a short-term problem become a long-term solution. If you didn't get it right the first time, look at what you didn't get right, look at what you did get right, and then from that, observe what didn't work in this instance, modify your behavior, go back out and do it again. Because I promise you, there is no thing that's a failure. There are just some things that are more successful in that moment than other things. That you need to allow yourself the freedom to explore, and you need to allow yourself the freedom to experience the moment, because when you do that, in that moment, you're the most alive. Life is too short to drink bad wine. Life is too short to drink bad coffee. And life is certainly too short to not allow yourself to feel every moment in an experience that is greater than the moment that is actually happening. To go into that moment of tachypnea, I can't pronounce that word to save my life, and to allow it to dilate, to be able to slow down to the speed of life and see it. Because one of the issues I have watching younger photographers today is there are no heroes. For me, I have all these heroes, all of these visual artists that I feel that I'm standing on the shoulder of. I'm standing on the shoulder of giants, as Newton said about math. And when I talk to people, it's like, well, who inspires you? Who's your inspiration? I don't know. I was some guy on Instagram did this thing and I thought it was, it's like, no, see, experience, have heroes, look at others' work, be inspired by it. Another thing that I feel is a great misfortune is that we, and I spoke about this at Optic West, is we move at the speed of light these days. And what happens at the speed of light is that time doesn't exist. And one of the beauties of being alive like we are is that time is finite for us, that there is increments of it, that we can experience it. So I try to live at the speed of life, not at the speed of light. When I was watching this, 15 photographs in 15 seconds, I don't want to take 15 photographs in 15 seconds. I want to be able to take that photograph in for as long as I want to look at it. And I want to be able to come back to it when I decide I want to. It's one of the choices that I made in doing this presentation was, yeah, I can fill you with 5,000 images and have them all go. But I want you to be able to take a moment with the images and to see them the way in which they took me. These are all moments that have meaning for me. This was shot on the day that my father was buried in Arlington, that last shot. And I just remember walking there after the funeral and going to the Tomb of the Unknowns. And I was moved. And I would like to believe that that emotional moment of that experience is now printed into that image or this image. I was in Myanmar going up the Awadi River and we were hit by a monsoon and we had to get in as quickly as we could because our boat was sinking because of the amount of water. And we were in this hut and I picked up the camera and I took this photograph, and the moment the camera went click, the little boy started crying. But I have this moment of all this fear and trepidation that we had, and that crying was, he had never heard a camera go off, and then he had never seen somebody that looked like me ever. And he stopped crying when I showed him the picture on the back of the camera. And all of a sudden, it was like, how did I get him in the camera? That moment to me is amazing and important. And that I'm afforded that luxury. One of the new luxuries that I'm afforded is something that you're seeing here in this picture, which is my camera doesn't make noise. Not only does my camera not make noise, it has the ability to have something, not have rolling shutter be a problem. So I can have conversational portraits. I can have photographs in which the subject is not aware of them being photographed, that they can be who they are, what they are, and where they are, when they are, and not have the self-consciousness of there's a picture being taken. These are powerful tools that we have that we did not have when I started photography, that we have the ability to capture incredible amounts of beauty and incredible amounts of these wonderful moments of time that are fleeting and that we need to slow down to be able to allow ourselves to experience. And that's why I invite you to consider looking at what time means, because the goal of a photograph is to create something that is breathtaking in the sense that it takes the breath of the viewer that looks at it and causes them to have it be like an expectant breath, like they can't wait for the moment to happen. That each one of these pictures is an absolute spontaneous moment. And because they're absolute spontaneity, in absolute spontaneity, you get absolute truth. There is only one way to be when you're spontaneous, and that is truthful, because there is no editing in a spontaneous moment. It is only the truth of that moment. And you can do that. You can accomplish that task, whether it is completely orchestrated shot like this was for a photo shoot for the Nikon 105 1.4 F-series lens that I was commissioned to do by Nikon, where I created an environment where the model had no idea that her picture was being taken to the deer, but truly what they heard was the click of the shutter, and you've got one that went, wait a minute, what's going on? But the rest of them didn't. And all of this is about the permission that you give yourself to explore what matters to you. And all of this has to do with you exploring your art to the point where you have an understanding of it that is so great that it can be in the subconscious, the unconscious mind, that gives you the power to be able to use all of those tools while you're busy focusing on the moment and allowing yourself to receive it. That you give yourself the gift of being able to take pictures, because it is the time in which you choose to take these photographs that are the most precious moments, because of all the things you have to do to accomplish getting to that point, getting to the point where you can allow yourself to be taken, getting yourself to reconcile to all the heaven and earth that you have to move to get to a place where these events that will occur that will never occur again, and you get to record them, and they can recur again in your heart every time you look at them. And people that view those pictures can look at those pictures and have those moments happen for them in an echo of the way in which they happen for you. And all of that comes down to not beating yourself up. And all of that comes down to giving yourself the permission to have the joy of the freedom of letting yourself fall backwards into the creative moment and being absolutely taken by it. And all of that is powered by how much you understand how it all works. And all of that makes it so that it doesn't matter what device you use. Any device that is capable of capturing an image becomes the tool, the instrument that you play. Now, why do I choose what it is that I choose, both with regard to camera, computer, monitor, and all that, is that I understand how it all works. And it's all a system that I try to make myself the weakest link of. So that it is not the limitation of technology that holds me back. It is the limitation of me that holds me back. And the only person that thinks that something is impossible is sitting in the same chair I am. And that is the goal that I try to have in everything I do, is why I am so hungry to learn about everything there is, to learn about everything there is, and anything else that's related to it. I think that that hunger, that ability to be taken, that ability to have all of those data points, to see how it all interplays, like how optical physics works with psychological observation, which works with spatial relationship, all of that comes together to create an image where in that moment, like that understanding exists, that I can get to a point where what I do is I follow the follower, that this picture takes me and I take that picture. And in so doing, I create a journey for everybody involved in it. And this is proof that all children do come from cabbage patches. 1 second. So that was the goal of this conversation. The goal of this conversation is to talk about what I think is more important, which is exploring what it is that is important to you, what it is that you as a visual artist want to say, and what it is that you want to play with. I play with geometry, I play with color, I play with focus, blur, I play with the way in which the eye tracks. That's my canvas. And all of this is being able to slow myself down to the speed of life so that I can be standing on the balcony of where I'm staying in a part of town and watch this moment occur and take a picture of it. Or to be able to participate in the entire experience of life in such a way that I can capture the geometry of life as it is moving, so that in one frame, I can float on what is occurring and I can get that moment and I can hold it, that I can see one image one way and then moments later see the same image and the same experience and the same event unfold in a completely different way, even though it is the same arching moment. The individual fractions of that moment become wholly different things, so that just by how I change my position and how I change my framing changes the way in which the light interacts, changes the way in which I observe it. Because what have I learned? I have learned that being a observer of an image, if I change my position, I can observe the same experience in a different way, that two observers see the same event, but can see that same event in two completely different ways. That I pay attention to the way in which the harmony of geometry works, and I pay attention to the way in which patterns work. And I understand that though patterns may be interesting, patterns interrupted are far more interesting. And what I want to do is I want to photograph the secret. I want to photograph the secret of two little girls conspiring and telling each other stories and jokes and making themselves laugh. I want to see that moment and be open to that moment in every picture I see, because every picture has a moment, a conspiratorial moment in which you interact with, in which you are part of, which you participate in which you are given the gift to be allowed to capture it, to hold it, create an image, and then put it forth in a way in which the viewer can experience it and be moved. This sequence of pictures here occurred in under maybe 40 seconds. I'm on a boat on the Ganges in Varanasi, and I am watching a ritual prayer on the steps to the Ganges. So this photograph happened. I isolated this photograph, and then all of those people were gone after they had done their prayers and things that they were going to do. Next image falls into a moment where the two women that you'll see sitting were having a conversation. Give it a second, right there. And they're remembering, and I've captured the moment of remembrance. And then the last moment, which is walking into the Ganges, which is the most precious experience to have in remembering why they were there. And my job was to tell this story and this experience. And we pulled up the boat, I got in, walked down, and I saw this. And the incredible lesson about life I learned about being open and receptive are in these moments. These are of my most favorite photographs that I've ever taken, and they're precious to me. And that's what's really important. Your photographs only need to be precious to one person. They only need to be precious to you. It's great if everybody loves your pictures. Don't get me wrong, it's a buzz, but it's not required. What is required is that any image that I make moves me, and any image that I make is important to me. And it is that importance to an image that is the gift that I give both myself and hopefully I give others. And I just want to share that thought. And then in closing, I think that these are words to live by. Neil deGrasse Tyson, be ashamed to die until you have scored some victory for humanity. It does not matter if anybody knows what you've done. It just matters that you've done something that has moved the needle. And the best movement of the needle are those movements in which affect humanity in such a way that nobody has any idea that you did it. And with that, I would like to open it up for conversation.
Wow. You just take that entire deep dive and now it's like, snap your fingers and we're coming out of the trance now. You lulled us into a deep place. In fact, I want to read this comment. I love it. Amy's joining us, said, you sound a lot like a mystic. I see a lot of overlap between mystic traditions and quantum physics. It seems that you've narrowed down one way of experiencing timelessness in that moment between the four contractions of the heart as the eyes are connected to it.
Amy, did I plant you? Thank you. Yes.
I mean, that's it. She gets it.
She got it. Amy, you're my hero. I will buy you a piece of cheesecake in New York.
There you go. Boil it down. Vincent, let's, if you could wrap it up, if somebody came to you and they said, okay, I've tried everything. I've tried to incorporate more feeling, more emotion. I've tried to make people feel my work and they're just missing something. Where do they start?
Well, say it again. Okay. And I'll break it down for you. Say what you just asked me again.
Okay. You've tried to find feeling in your work. Some people just.
Okay. Stop right there. Hold it right there. You've tried to find feeling in your work, which means what?
You can't even find it. You don't know where. You don't know what you're looking for or what you're looking to feel.
It's like when people say, oh, I'm trying to find myself. I always want to say, I can help you. Go into the bathroom, look in the mirror. Congratulations. You found yourself. All right. So what it is you're busy, blah, 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 I got to look for it. You're trying to find a meaning. You're trying to find, I'm going to go find some meaning. It's like, be happy now. Go do it now. No. Okay. It's in Confucius. Confucius said, a hummingbird lands on the stillest branch. If you're busy trying to find meaning instead of allowing meaning to be created from you, within you, you are not the stillest branch. And that emotion, that feeling has no place to land because the branch is moving and the hummingbird moves faster than the branch, but it's not going to land on something unless it's still. So the hummingbird is that experience that you're trying to get, but you're too busy to see it. Give me the second part of your question.
Where do we start? How do we get there? How do we get to that point or begin the journey?
Go back into the bathroom, look in the mirror. Congratulations. You have found the place to start. The issue is that you've become goal-oriented in what it is you're endeavoring to do versus saying, I've got to get to here. Well, you got to find a destination. Good on ya. How about we approach the journey as being the destination? That it is the journey to it. I'll give you an example. I can actually show you, well, I don't have the hard drive to show you pictures. I relearned something this last trip in Portugal that I know at a core level and did the very thing that I absolutely beat people up about doing to themselves. So I'll tell you what I did. And you saw one of the pictures from that experience because the journey then became the destination. I'm in Porto, or Porto, okay, which is pronounced Porto here. And I am at the mouth of where the ocean comes into the bay. And they have these really, really cool old cable car thingies that they're electric cars, but they look like cable cars, but they're electric. And they are really cool. And Porto is the city, from my understanding, that survived the 1755 earthquake. Let me get out of this. Why don't you put me to me? And in doing that, what occurred is that all of those buildings in Porto are pre-earthquake and tsunami. So they're from 1755 and earlier. So this town is just breathtaking. And because of where it sits, it gets fog. Now, there's this belief that on a clear day, you can see forever. No, on a clear day, you can see 22 miles. To see forever, what you need is fog. So I am on the Gaia side, which is the other side of the Douro River, looking at Porto. And one day, all of this cloud, this giant whiteout of fog happens. And like, oh yeah, I've seen the cable car. I've seen the fog. Now in my head, I have this vision of this cable car coming through the fog around this curve. I'm going to build a picture for you with these old buildings on these tracks. Oh my God. Yeah, baby. Yeah. So what do? I get up at dark 30 after a rainstorm, when the fog event occurs and the entire city and river is just filled with fog. I beeline it over to this place where I know I'm going to find this photograph, show up, no cable car. Walk into a hotel and says, where's the cable car? It's 8 a.m. Where's the cable car? They don't start running till 10. Huh? But you don't understand. I'm following Ansel Adams here without pre-visualization, because I've pre-visualized the photograph. Photography is nothing more than a 5-finger exercise. What do you mean there is no cable car? I have the fog, I have the vision, I have the idea. Not until 10. Okay, so I get a cup of coffee, a pingo, because it's one, which is basically a cortado, which is basically a macchiato, the Italian macchiato, not the Starbucks macchiato. A real small cup of coffee, a little splash of foam. So I cross the street and I'm looking around and I go, oh, wow, that's cool. Take a picture of it. I'm going to get me that cable car. I'm going to get me that cable car in the fog. That's what I'm going to get. Well, if I had to pick one problem with Porto, the problem with Porto is there are too many modern cars. Now, keeping in mind, I just came from Cuba, in which there aren't as many modern cars as there are old cars. There are all these modern cars in my vision of timelessness of this cable car that's going to come through the fog. It's going to look like I took it in 1962. I don't have anything like that. Well, I have fog. Fog will cover up a lot of problems. Great, got that. Wow, look at that. Look at the way the fog is coming off the Douro River. Oh my God, look at that building poking. Picture. But I'm going to get me some cable car. So I'm all walking around all over here, just trying to occupy time, being taken. Finally, it's 10 a.m. Get myself in position. And what do I discover? All the fog is burned off on the side of the river in which I'm at. And what I have is a bunch of modern new cars with a cable car that looks like it's an old cable car and a bunch of modern new cars. Which brings me to the second observation that Paul Caponegro made, which is if you believe in pre-visualization, you deserve what you get. So what I got was what I deserved. And then I proceeded to walk 8 miles up the Douro River, being taken by the journey. And I have some of the most amazing photographs I've ever taken in my life. I could spend the rest of my life taking pictures of that city. It is that beautiful. And what did I relearn? The journey is the destination. If you're busy looking for meaning, meaning will never find you. Be open to receive the meaning of everything and you'll get everything. There's a difference between Eastern Buddhism and Western Buddhism. In Eastern Buddhism, there's a concept called want nothing and you'll get everything you've ever wanted. Whereas in Western Buddhism, I'm going to chant for a car. Okay, that hasn't worked for me yet. But when I want nothing, I get everything I've ever wanted. I just didn't know what it was I wanted until I get it. And so I don't worry if I'm going to get a good picture. There are some times where there are no pictures that take me, but the journey of the day is just as fulfilling as if I shot 10,000 pictures that day. Be open to receive the experience, and it is that openness to the experience that will allow you to have a greater experience in your art and in your life. So that was a very windy answer to a very short question.
I love it. That answer was the journey. The journey to that answer was the answer, if that makes sense. Well, we're going to roll it into the next question here from Sid. Sid says, interested. Sid is interested in your comments on what the role of intention is versus the role of informed fortune in generating meaningful images.
Well, listen to you, Sid. Oh my God. Run that one by me again so that I get this one right.
Let's break this down. All right. The role of intention versus the role of informed fortune in generating meaningful images.
So one makes their own luck. I will agree with that. And what is the role of intention? I believe that your intention should always be good. All right. One of the things I love about Buddhism is try to do right. Always try to do right. That's the intention. And if you live by that intention, in the philosophy of the thought, you will always be given the gift that you're supposed to receive, if you're supposed to receive one. So I try to always walk in with a positive intention, not a negative intention. And I believe that be open and have the visualization, I will be amazed. And give me the second part of that question.
Informed fortune.
Informed fortune is, I believe, it's like, oh, he's an overnight success. Really? Steve Martin was an overnight success. No, it was the one episode that he was on Saturday Night Live that all of a sudden he became famous. But the man spent, 20 years to get to that moment. So was that informed fortune? And yes, the fortune itself was that he spent the time, he learned the technique, he put in the hours, he had that experience to get it so that it becomes effortless. In Zen Buddhism, there's a concept called shibumi, thoughtful, thoughtless thought. That is the point of understanding it to the point where it becomes organic and not conscious, and you do the right thing in the moment that is completely and perfectly right for the moment without thinking about it. So you create your own fortune based on your understanding of all the things that are involved, to the point where what you can do is have a situational awareness that you don't get into task oversaturation. And I find frequently what happens to people is because they don't have the understanding of how the art form works at the level that would make them more successful, they flip out and they go into task oversaturation. It's why you practice. You don't practice. Practice doesn't make perfect. Okay, perfect practice makes perfect. You have to practice at practicing. So you do it over and over and over. And mastery is a variation of repetition over time. That is the equation of mastery. So that what you want to do is do it as many different ways as you can and see how it all works. Like when I have a successful image to this day, what I do, I'll go back and do it again. See what discoveries I can make. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not. But I observe what it is that I do. That I have informed luck, that I appear to be lucky because nobody sees the chalk marks, because nobody sees how much effort it went to get it to the point where I can do it without effort. I hope, Sid, that answers your question. Just give me a Y or an N, and I'll let Derek tell me if I succeeded.
Yes, let us know, Sid. And if not, we're more than happy to keep diving into this. So what does that say for perspective? Does our perspective, do we control? I mean, I hand you a circumstance, and the circumstance could be black and white, but how you handle it, that's the X factor, right? Your perspective.
Right. Well, that's your individual voice. It's what's unique to you. You and I are completely different people, though we both like cheesecake.
Fair.
Okay, but we both see the world differently, and we both have different experiences that brought us here. We're both at the edge. We just it was different journeys to get there, but we're both there. And it's our perspective that brought us here that we bring to the table that brings us to the point where we see things and create things. It's like the reason why I don't need credit for anything that I say, that if it sticks with you and resonates, use that as a tool to move your voice forward. Why? My goal is to make it so that you are more powerful as a human being, as a visual artist. I've had a great life. I mean, Derek, if anybody knows how wild my craziness is, you're one of those people. So I invite that. I wish that for everybody. I wish everybody can have the dream that they had when they were a little kid, you know, that they get to be that, or when they fell in love with photography, the dream that they had, they get to live, because it's not a better buzz. And it's the perspective that you bring. It's the voice that is wholly unique to you. Everybody has a right to say what it is they want to express visually. That's the joy of it. And that you get to share it, and that your images get to live beyond you. Those things are why we should do that. That gift is what you should leave. You should leave that image that moves that person that sees it the same way you were moved when it was taken, and creates for them the same experience that happened for you when you saw the first image, where you said, that is the way I want to speak. So yeah, it's a matter of your perspective, but it's everything that, say, all right, I'll give you an example. I want for you to say, I am, and your full name.
I am Derek Fassbender.
Okay, see how that feels? Okay, now what I want you to say is, my name is Lenny Bendel.
My name is Lenny Bendel.
You feel the difference?
I'm not Lenny Bendel.
So there's no anything behind that. Your name is the icon, for lack of a better word, the avatar of everything that you have been up to that moment. And that is what you bring to a photograph. You don't bring Lenny Bendel to a picture. There's no habitation to it. But there is when you say, I'm Derek versus I'm Lenny, because everything you are in that moment is held in that moment when you push the button.
That all being said, do you think there's something to be said? And I know this argument or discussion has been debated ad nauseum over the last couple of years, but if I'm following you in some sense, any image I take, I can take the most mundane image of the most boring moment. But to me, I was there. I felt it. There was something. Maybe it makes me think of that day in particular. So I appreciate that image, because to me, it has meaning, and that image lives within me. Mm-hmm. But now we live in a culture where a lot of our imagery is for consumption, and it starts to permeate our brain. Well, will other people like it? Are we creating images that reflect what we're living? You know, you talked about the life you live, and we both, you know, we live interesting, wild lives, and we take images that are meaningful to us because we know what is behind the image. But to others, they might not get it. They might not understand it. They might judge the technical merit of an image and not see beyond it.
Well, here's the thing. I don't care. That's the hardest thing to get to. Okay, I can tell you this as somebody that went through art school. You getting to the point where you don't care. It doesn't matter to me if you like it. It only matters to me that I like it. Because when all those pictures I showed you, every one of them, those are postcards from the vacation that was my life, or that is my life. That every one of the first picture of Shia, okay? The very first picture that I had of Shia that I photographed in the coat room of B&H, that I had been stalking that poor man for 10 years. And when I finally got the nerve up to ask him to take his picture, and he looked at me and he says, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to do good or bad? And I said, well, good. And he says, okay, click. That man looked right through me. He took that picture. I didn't take it. The compelling look that man put through me, pulled my heart, fired the shutter, and goes, good. And he walked out. I hold that memory in that photograph. Whether it means something to somebody or not doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is I remember that entire experience with that crappy light, fluorescent light with those black overcoats that is the background to the lint on that, and everybody in there all trying to get out, and it was all of that. Okay, that's what I remember. But when you see that, I would hope that you see a photograph of a man who had the ability to see right through you, because that photograph is in my studio and he stares at me every day that I'm in it working. And what I remember is, are you doing good? Are you doing right? And that's, for me, Shaya's my Buddha image, in a sense. The compelling question are, make sure that you're doing the right thing. That's all he asked. And when I said yes, he gave me the gift of his photograph and he got the payment that he wanted.
Wonderful.
Doesn't matter if you like it, only matters that I like it. Only matters that it has meaning to me. So I have photographs that mean something to me, but have no meaning to anybody else. That's okay. That's why I do them.
We all need to look within. Now, we're going to close on this thought right here. Sid did respond. He said, yes, it did answer his question.
Oh, thank God.
But also, he appreciates your story about the cable car, as that was more directed at his question. So look, you didn't even know it, but that story actually brought something more to his question there. That's where he was at. That story right there resonated with Sid.
Cool. Because I'll tell you what, there's an interesting observation about English as a language. Whenever there's a question asked, there are actually 4 questions on the table. There's a question that's being asked, and the question you want the answer to. Then there's a question that I heard, and the question that I perceive you want the answer to. Like if you ask somebody, do you like red or blue? And they go blue. And then you say, well, do you like red as well? Well, yes. Well, the answer actually then is both. So what happens is that story was in part an aspect of the question that Sid wanted the answer to. And that there go I by the grace of God, that story came out in which I got to answer it. So, you know, circumstance and serendipity and all of that work out that, you know, coincidence is God's attempt at remaining anonymous, or the universe's attempt at remaining anonymous if you don't believe in a deity. So thanks. And Sid, I'm glad I answered your question.
Vinny, always a pleasure, man. Thank you for blessing us. You got me like all zenned out over here. I think I'm like mentally, I don't know if I can recover from this for the rest. I can't be, I'm not firing right now. You got me in like Zen mode.
Well, then my work is done here.
That's it.
I'm going to have a glass of red wine now because it is 7:03 my time.
We're keeping you. Well, go enjoy the rest of the trip to Portugal. I hope you have a wonderful trip, safe travels. Don't forget about me.
Well, believe me, you and I have to have a conversation about back pocket photography. So no, I'm not going to forget about you. And thank you for BenQ for providing me the forum to be able to speak, because for me, if the eyes are the window of the soul, that monitor is the window to the soul of my image. So I can't do what I do without it. So on that happy note,
yes,
I'll talk to you the first of the year.
There we go. Huge thank you to Vinny. Huge thank you to BenQ. And of course, to all of our viewers who hopefully are feeling what I feel after listening to him for the last hour. So thank you all again for tuning in. Thank you, Mr. Versace, for blessing us with your wisdom. But that's it. That's all we got for you right now. Another rendition of the B&H virtual event space is in the books. Catch y'all next time.
Peace.